we are joined today by Nora Grossman of Voca. In terms of this Innovation Roundup series, I think the common thread is we've been talking about uses of communication technologies. And we previously were talking about sensors in grease interceptors and monitoring fats, oils, and grease in a wastewater treatment system. And really, that's about communication and information. This is a completely different world where we're talking about humans and what's in their heads. And so welcome, Nora Grossman.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wondered if you could start off just talking about your background and your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So Voca was founded by my colleague, Brian Jaffe, in 2017. And it started locally in Redwood City. His goal was to create a technological tool that would bring the people, individual residents, citizens closer together with the government that was serving them. And so he created Voca with a mission to strengthen democracy by simplifying and expanding civic participation. And that remains our mission today. And we do that through text messaging micropolls, which once a week we send to all of our participants. These are really quick and easy one-question surveys that provide a little bit of context on an issue that's going on at the state or local level, and then give our participants a really easy way to give feedback to the ones who are making decisions. So that's sort of Voca's background. In terms of my background, I joined the company in 2019. Prior to that, I graduated from the College of Charleston in South Carolina with a degree in computer science. Moved out to California to work in the tech industry and really discovered that my passion lied in not technology for technology's sake, but in using technology to solve some of our larger societal problems. So I found Voca, and it's been a great fit for me to have a way to use my technical skills, but also, the interpersonal aspects of it, the relationship building aspects that are really important when it comes to innovation in the civic space. And yeah, it's been a great journey so far.
Programmatically, can you explain just from the user view what it entails, and maybe since I guess Redwood City, of the cities that you've been involved in, is probably the one with the longest run, what impact it's had on the city?
Yeah,
Two questions
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So your first question, what's it like from a user's perspective? You sign up once, you have an option, which we highly encourage, to provide some basic demographic data about yourself. That really helps us make a compelling case when we're talking to decision makers that we represent everyone and not just one type of person. And then after you sign up, you get one text message per week from us. And each week it's a different topic. And might be an issue at the local level or the state level. Like I mentioned before, we give you a little bit of background, and then you can vote. And we have a variety of different question formats, but usually one-click vote, and then the option to leave a comment, an open-ended comment, if you want to share more feedback, more nuanced feedback about the question, the topic that's being discussed. And then after you share that, you can kind of view other people's responses. You can view the aggregate data as a whole, and you can view next steps for getting more involved on weeks where we offer, increased participation, whether that be attending an event, or signing a petition. The possibilities on that front are endless, and we've really only begun to start exploring how we might get people more involved.
Yeah. So as a kind of a case study, what would you say as far as the past couple of years with Redwood City?
Yeah, so with Redwood City in particular, there's definitely been a lot of interest from the people on our platform to discuss sort of development issues and housing issues in particular. I think there's kind of been a sentiment that participation in the process, the design process, is not perhaps as easy or as accessible as it could be. And so we've gotten a ton of interest from people on our platform saying, why don't you ask about the redevelopment of Sequoia Station, or why don't you ask about a specific housing project that's being discussed, as a way for them to give kind of constructive feedback, and positive feedback and constructive feedback alike, to people at City Hall, to the City Council members, so that they can really make the decisions that they make, having heard from a larger group of people than the group of people that are able to turn up at, say, City Council meetings.
Yeah, I have heard from some city council people that they really enjoy the comments. I mean, it's good certainly to get results in aggregate, and I think you have quite a statistically significant sample size when you do these things. But they really like even looking, further into the particular comments, and I think that's kind of interesting. It will be interesting to hear in future about how to react to development projects, because obviously that is more than a yes/no answer. I mean, well, sometimes it's a yes/no answer, but really, to be fair, it is a multi-year process that with a lot of nuance. So that's a kind of a hard thing, harder thing to cover. This it's interesting in that there's this very localized kind of information you've been doing, and you've expanded to a few cities, and you mentioned the state. So I wondered if you could talk more about, say, market foci.
Absolutely. So in June of last year, we actually expanded statewide to all of California, and we experienced some really rapid growth. We grew from about 5,000 participants to now we have almost 40,000 participants throughout the state of California. And the motivation for that kind of expansion of our focus was, twofold. On the one hand, we really wanted to be able to find out if this sort of method of community engagement was something that worked and could scale at a larger level beyond just, the hyper local, the city or county level. And then, of course, we wanted to kind of delve into some more statewide issues. We discovered that, oftentimes, particularly in election season, there were topics that we wanted to discuss, that our participants wanted to discuss, that were really outside the scope of local. They were regional issues or they were statewide issues. And so we saw the desire for engagement at that level as well. And that was part of our motivation for expanding statewide as well. But with that said, we still have a ton of passion for local, and just recently launched a new initiative where we're really hoping to work more closely with local governments, elected officials, community organizations to expand our local service specifically into more cities throughout California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would certainly behoove these. Well, information is good, right? So, and there's always a lot of talk about community outreach, and so I think it would really behoove a lot of organizations to get that kind of localized direct feedback. I mean, it's pretty pure feedback.
I hope so, and I also think it's worth mentioning that part of what we try to do at Voca is kind of build the first rung of the ladder of engagement. And you mentioned earlier about how, when it comes to development issues, there's a lot of nuance that comes into this. It's not necessarily a yes/no question. And that is a completely valid point. And I think what we're trying to do is not necessarily provide every degree of nuance. Our goal is really to include as many people in that opening conversation as we possibly can, and then give these government agencies and elected officials and organizations a starting point, the group of people who are already engaged, to then be able to take them to the next level. So for us, it's about engagement at the end of the day, and how many people can we bring into the conversation.
Well, I can speak from my organization, Sustainable Silicon Valley, that we have been talking about combining a few different things and essentially wrapping services, perhaps some of that nuance might find itself in a kind of a portal geared to a project, and also tied in with typically the developer and the city have a web, some increasingly sophisticated kind of web platforms and things as well. But we wanted to kind of look at that kind of stuff from a kind of a broader view. I mean, just as far as how, bike friendly it might be, or have transportation links, or, what's the impact on local air quality, and, water issues as well. So we're looking to really have a whole checklist of things. And so hopefully we have an API kind of agreement at some point. But by the way, and here, this is a conversational presentation. And so I'd like to focus a little bit on the presentation, just on what some of the results look like. If you have you'd like to grab the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pull up some of examples of some of our recent micropolls. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So this is actually our most recent question. This is something that we published last week. And the incentive for asking about the future of nuclear energy in California is the upcoming closing of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, which is California's last operational nuclear power plant. And so we were curious to get feedback from the general population on their views on nuclear energy in general in California, and whether that should be a component of California's energy portfolio moving forward. I think this was an interesting issue because nuclear energy is something that not everyone knows a ton about or thinks a ton about in kind of their day-to-day. And you can see in the results that 15% of people were undecided about this issue, which for our micropolls is a really high percentage. Mm-hmm. But we were also able to collaborate with a couple of organizations on both sides of the issue of nuclear energy in California, to be able to provide additional context, to be able to make sure that we are getting our facts straight and our information correct, and that we were giving people an opportunity not just to share their feedback, but also to learn a little bit if that was something that they hadn't taken time to delve into before.
I'm not sure if this is a dynamic thing, if you can click. I was wondering about the distribution of responses, if the map works.
That is not, but let me pull it up really quick. That is not hard to do.
Because this goes into the question about, just about this distribution statewide.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here we go. All right, you seeing this?
Yeah.
Great. So this is our live results page, where you can actually come and interact with the comments here. You can browse, you can sort them different ways. But what you were asking about in particular was the distribution. So we have a map feature that lets you see how people have voted by region, by their approximate address. These aren't exact addresses. We do take privacy very seriously. So these have been slightly obscured, these addresses, but they're still regionally correct. So it's really interesting to be able to see, for example, I thought this was really interesting to zoom in on San Luis Obispo, which is where the Diablo Canyon power plant is.
Right.
Because I was kind of expecting that, we'd see a higher concentration of red in that area. But as you can see, it still seems to be pretty mixed. So having visibility into sort of a regional breakdown of these responses, I think is really useful in getting context around how people feel as well.
Yeah, because it's actually too, I guess, south of Pismo Beach there, and
yep.
And fair amount of green. I have to say I've been kind of surprised by some of the state things. I mean, for instance, about electric building code.
Mhm.
which kind of, well, there were a couple things: electric building code or single family zoning, I think was one that kind of came up, and where these are, relatively new ideas that have been gaining momentum, but there were some interesting statewide results from these. So
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is that the opinions that you hear, maybe even reflected in the media, on social media, definitely don't necessarily represent everyone who lives in an area. They represent the people who have, the time, and the knowledge and the influence and often the money to be able to advocate for what they want. And so sometimes that aligns with the overall popular view, but a lot of times it doesn't. And so
mhm.
one of the things that we're trying to do with Voca is democratize that system of giving feedback and make it so that everyone has a chance to say what they think and to be heard.
Yeah, and it also is interesting seeing the, say, evolution of public opinion,
Yeah,
as well, and just sometimes the variance between, as you say, what um, uh, some smaller groups of people that are really, involved in it are talking about versus the, say, the public at large, or at least um, the polling community, kind of at large, and see maybe that changes over time. I mean, the classic issue was gay marriage that um, seemed to change kind of overnight, and opinion overnight, but it took, like 10 years to become an overnight sensation.
absolutely. And I think one thing that's definitely worth mentioning about Voca as well is that because we have a relatively high rate of not only engagement but retention of our participants, we're able to do things like ask the same question every 6 months and chart how responses have
Mm.
changed over time. And that kind of information is, like you said, it's really interesting in being able to measure shifts in public opinion, but also to be able to, I think, give even individuals a sort of metric for measuring their own change in perception, which is something that I think we don't talk about enough.
Mhm.
You as an individual change over time. You're not a fixed point of data. You are a living, breathing person, and your opinions are subject to change when new information comes in. And Voca gives us a way to see that from the outside, but also for you to sort of see that on the inside as well.
Yes, I certainly agree, and all these things you mentioned are pretty compelling. I mean, obviously, just in this, it seems like forever, but just the past few years, there's been a lot of discussion nationally, maybe a little less so statewide, but mostly nationally, about um, the importance and the relevance and the accuracy of polling.
Yeah.
And, obviously, I mean, there was recently a thing just with congressional polling in 2020, where a lot of polling organizations kind of actually put out, about a half dozen of them put out a document that was pretty extraordinary. They're all competitors, but they kind of put out a "mea culpa" in a
Mm,
way, a kind of you know view of how they failed to really um, get. I mean, maybe because of some of the methods. I mean, telephone, landline polling versus cell phone and everything else. So, that they failed to kind of read what was going on. And this is after, like, seems like 10 years of articles in the, especially in the mainstream press, about diners in Pennsylvania and how people's opinions, from there were coming from. So anyway, your approach is, I could say, as a user, is very, does not put a lot of demand. I mean, it's you basically get a text message a week, that leads to as much feedback as you want to give. I mean, just as opposed to maybe vote over 5 options versus adding, kind of opinion and comments. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and I will say this too, that, unlike some tech companies, we're really not looking to come in and disrupt an existing industry. We're not looking to replace traditional pollsters. There's absolutely a time and a place for the more traditional phone survey that takes 10, 15, 20 minutes. But what we're trying to do is supplement that. We're trying to add an additional tool to the tool bucket that government agencies have, that organizations have, and that individuals have too, for giving feedback. And that additional tool is one that is meant to be as accessible as possible, and meant to give as many people a chance to engage as possible at that very, very first level, at the ground floor. And so that's, I think, where we kind of fit into the larger puzzle, and perhaps insight that we can provide that more traditional methods of collecting public opinion maybe miss a little bit is all the people that don't have time to engage, or that don't have the means to engage.
Nora, what do you see as ahead for the future? I think you mentioned the local initiative, but what do you see? Yeah.
Let me just pop over here to the slide that I have. So yes, we're starting a local initiative, and we're looking for pilot jurisdictions, organizations, could be currently seated elected officials, or when election season comes around, candidates as well, because we really want to expand Voca. And the truth of the matter is that we are a super small team, and we simply don't have the resources to be able to operate in 50 different cities across California as much as we would like to. And we also believe that we can provide a really useful service to the kind of organizations that I mentioned earlier. So what's next for us is we're really looking to find partners who are interested in the service that we provide, and who are interested in bringing this sort of high-level community engagement, micropolling service to their community. So if anyone is interested in that, I highly encourage you to reach out to me or to us at contact@voca.vote. And we'd really love to get your feedback on the idea and talk about how we might work together.
Well, great. I guess unless there's other kind of takeaway points you have, we can have that as a trial close, a last word.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's yeah. I mean, I can definitely think of a lot of possibilities, knowing what you do and say the needs of organizations and local government and joint power authority, organizations that can really benefit from this. So well, anyway, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And I best of luck in this, and I definitely I'm a happy customer, but definitely want to make other people aware of this, because I think it's just a really great thing.
Thanks, appreciate it.
All righty, thank you.
All right.